It gives me great pleasure today. Congresswoman Maxine Waters is considered by many to be one of the most powerful women in American politics today. She has gained a reputation as a fearless and outspoken advocate for women, children, people of color, and the poor. Elected to her 15th term in the U.S. House of Representatives with more than 70% of the vote in the 43rd District of California, Congresswoman represents a large part of South LA. She has made history as the first woman and the first African-American woman to chair the House Financial Services Committee. She has been a tireless champion of the CDFI community, and we are grateful. And she has always been on the cutting edge of tackling difficult and often controversial issues. And so without further ado, I introduce you to our chairwoman of the Financial Services Committee, Maxine Waters.
Good afternoon, and before I begin my remarks, I'd first like to thank CDFI Coalition for inviting me to this annual conference, and CDFI Coalition Board Chair, Mr. John Holdsclaw, the fourth, for that kind introduction. So more than 40 years ago, when I was still in the California State House, I helped to found Pacific Coast Regional. I don't think it was known as a CDFI at that time. It came out of a loan guarantee program that we had. But I'm proud to report that Pacific Coast Regional continues to serve its community in Los Angeles. So because of my past work, when the pandemic hit, I knew that CDFIs, as well as minority depository institutions, or MDIs, would serve as a critical lifeline to many underserved communities. Each dollar provided by the Paycheck Protection Program, that is the PPP, was key to keeping the doors of many small businesses open, including small businesses owned by women and people of color. When mega banks were prioritizing wealthy customers for PPP loans, CDFIs and MDIs were on the front lines up all hours of the day and night to ensure PPP loans were distributed to our nation's smallest businesses. With this in mind, I fought to include $60 billion set aside for CDFIs and MDIs to ensure small businesses could access the second round of PPP. I also kept pushing Treasury to make sure all CDFIs, including CDFI loan funds, could be a PPP lender if they wanted to. Following that effort, I worked with my colleagues and introduced the Promoting and Advancing Communities of Color through Inclusive Lending Act, a comprehensive bill to strengthen CDFIs and MDIs. Based on key parts of my bill, I worked hard to secure an unprecedented $12 billion in capital investments and grants to support CDFIs and MDIs in December 2020. These programs have bipartisan support as I worked with the committee's ranking member, Mr. McHenry, as well as Senators Brown and Senator Warner, who was key in helping to develop this legislation and help to work it through. He has been absolutely stellar in his support for CDFIs and MDIs. And of course, Senator Crapo was also involved in supporting the legislation. So we enacted these programs into law. To date, 1.25 billion of these funds have been distributed, and I'm closely monitoring how Treasury and the CDFI fund continue to deploy these funds. Last year, I formed a community development finance advisory group with Senator Warner to help us in our oversight of these programs while exploring additional ideas to strengthen MDIs and CDFIs. My group includes Kathy Mahon from Inclusive, Janine Jacobs from Community Development Bankers Association, and Jennifer Vasiloff from Opportunity Finance Network, all three who also serve on the CDFI Coalition's Board of Directors. My committee held a hearing last month on these issues, and we heard from several different MDIs and CDFIs, including Lendistry, fintech CDFI based in Los Angeles that has deployed $93 million to over 7,000 small businesses the past few years, somewhat in the district that I represent, I'm told. And they have provided more than $8 billion in capital to over 500,000 small businesses nationwide. We also explored new ideas at the hearing, such as taking steps to address technology challenges that CDFIs and MDIs face, and creating a new program to incentivize CDFIs to support millennials and other young entrepreneurs that wish to start a business. We're looking to advance legislation to make CDFI bond guarantee program permanent and more accessible to smaller CDFIs so they can utilize that program to better serve their communities. We're also exploring legislation to authorize an additional $4 billion in capital investments and grants so that more CDFIs can benefit from the Emergency Capital Investment Program and other programs. So I welcome any feedback the CDFI Coalition and your members may have on these and other ideas to strengthen CDFIs. In closing, I would like to personally thank each of you for your tireless work during the pandemic to distribute critical relief to consumers and small businesses, in particular to hit hard communities and businesses owned by people of color. So I look forward to working with you closely on ensuring CDFIs receive the capital they need to continue serving our communities. Let me just share with you that as the chair of the Financial Services and someone who's created the Diversity and Inclusion Subcommittee, we have made it a priority to deal with, of course, women-owned and minority businesses. And of course, we're very proud of the work that I alluded to that we did with the PPP program when the big banks created their own panels and took care of their concierge clients. Because we were there, we were able to get that $60 billion more. So focusing on CDFIs and MDIs, which I've always done with, in particular with MDIs, we're learning a lot more about CDFIs. And because they are basically involved in so many different ways, whether we're talking about CDFIs and MDIs, or CDFIs and credit unions, or CDFIs that I call standalone, what we see is CDFIs that are out there. But when we talk about CDFIs, we've learned to have to talk about them in different ways based on how they're organized and where they get their funds from, and finding out that some, have had to, pursue venture capital and other ways by which to keep going. But now that we are focused and we're here, we are going to do everything that we can to ensure that we know and understand very well all of the CDFIs, who they are, what they do, who they fund, and what more can be done to strengthen them. And we are going to work very actively all over the country to get to know these CDFIs a lot better. And I guess before I became chair, and before we started to make CDIs more visible in government, and before we were able to form our subcommittee on diversity and inclusion, I suppose the relationship was kind of directly with Treasury, and trying to work with Treasury to ensure funding, et cetera. But it's bigger than that now. And we are very focused, and we're very interested in strengthening and knowing a lot more that we can do to ensure that the communities know about CDFIs. What we discovered is communities don't know a lot about CDFIs. And I think that we're coming up with some ideas about how we can engage our CDFIs more with the communities so that they'll know to come to you and tell you whom they are and what their needs are. So still there's a lot of work to be done, but that's why we're here now to do that kind of work. And
well,
so
Madam Chair, thank you so much. And as one other piece, as a proud Head Start child, I want to also thank you for your support and long time for the Head Start program. So that means a lot to me. Just one question before we go to break. You've really seen the CDFI industry grow. And so you touched on it a little bit there toward the very end, but what do you see as the future of the interest for CDFIs on the Hill? I mean, what does that look like to you emerging out of the pandemic?
Well, let me just say this. It's really all about resources. It's all about the money. And so when I hear about CDFIs who have not had the resources because of the way the funding is done through Treasury and who gets the rewards or however you want to describe them, we understand that just as we've come up with this $12 billion, that it's all about continuing to come up with ways by which we can strengthen the CDFIs. The major lending institutions in this country still are not as responsive to small and minority businesses as they should be, and probably never will be. And that's why it's so important to strengthen the CDFIs to be able to do the work that has been absent in our communities from the big banks and financial institutions. So that's where we're going to go. We're going to go continuously for more resources for the CDFIs. We're going to go harder for CDFIs to get to know the communities and for the communities to get to know the CDFIs, and also to be able to absolutely take all of these small businesses, many that are just peculiar to minority communities. Mm-hmm. You know, when we talk about beauty salons and, you know, they have never had any connection with government whatsoever. And so we're talking about looking at many of the small businesses in our communities who have never received any funding from anywhere. They are striving, they are just hanging on. And we're talking about how we can not only strengthen them, but help them to know that their government does have programs that can help them. The other thing that I want to make sure that I pay some attention to, and that is a way by which we can assist our small businesses in responding to ways by which they could receive some resources if they just knew how to do it. Many of our small business will put these businesses together because they have, scraped together money from, family and friends and saved some money, and they've done all of that. They don't know anything about responding to requests for proposals. They don't know anything about responding to PPP even, we discovered. So what I want to do is I want to find out what we can do to enhance small businesses and minority businesses, ways by which they can understand what's available to them and how to apply for the resources.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Waters, for your time. We really appreciate it. And so, Coalition folks, we're going to go to break until 3:30, and we'll see you back really soon. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you.